Chapter 2 Untimely Airland Battle. Doctrine. January 14th, Unified Year 1928, sky above the eastern front. The front of a flight formation is, without doubt, the best position for anyone who wishes to savor a sweet blend of apprehension and tranquility. So long as one does not forget the proviso that this applies only in war. While mages may have little to do with the loud commotion of engines, mage flight is far from silent. How best to describe it? A whoosh, a rumble, a roar, perhaps some other ineffable term. While the words may differ from language to language, one fact remains constant. You cannot escape noise until you reach the speed of sound. Regardless of how it may seem at times, reality is governed by the laws of physics. If that applies equally to this world that Tanya knows, where I have been dumped by being X, then it would seem the same template as being reused. If being X created this world, then he must be a rather banal one. Might even say haphazard creator. Quite rough around the edges for someone who supposedly possesses the knowledge of all creation. Perhaps these similarities, in the end, are less the work of a creator and more the incidental product of chance. Having observed multiple worlds, I am convinced that even the miraculous creation of a world is ultimately just a matter of coincidence. Which would mean there is no such thing as fate. Nothing is decided in advance. And so, the argument that the Empire's inevitable, fast approaching defeat, a cataclysm certain to come sooner or later, unfair though that might be, should be accepted with calmness and grace is ultimately baseless. The future is created by human toil and determination. As long as a single foothold remains, Tanya will continue to struggle. But how much can I actually do? A quick glance at the ground below makes the intractability of our situation painfully clear. The destroyed bases are still in flames. The remains of former defensive strongholds have become a common sight. As an unexpected benefit, however, they serve as beacons for the mages, who now find themselves flying by night. These are the ruins of a dream, the defensive line upon which the Empire was meant to fight, painstakingly built by General Zedor and to be commanded by General Lawton, now reduced to piles of debris and armchair abstraction. HMPH. I can only shrug. I could try to play it tough, but there is no disguising the gravity of this situation. In the end, however, it was not ideology that led to this state but ordinary, everyday people. And human strength can only be countered with human strength. Decisive action must be taken, I decide, clutching a solitary fist in the sky. Now is the time for decisive action and self-reliance, not mysterious fate. Fortunately, I have a small but organized force on my side. This division's worth of mages I have scraped together to serve as Tanya's fist are more than capable of generating the power needed to turn things around. I have provided the fulcrum, and I shall move the world. Aerial mages truly can do almost anything. It's borderline ridiculous. They're particularly skilled at close air support. As flying infantry, they understand the support that their earthbound comrades need. Yet they are also ideal for long-range interdiction and airborne drops. Why, of course, when necessary, mages can execute everything from airborne assaults to seizing and holding ground, all at the drop of a hat. Mages even have a few tricks up their sleeves. Want to cut off the enemy's head? That's right in their wheelhouse. Aerial mages offer precisely the decapitation tactics you seek. Targeting the chain of command is a perennial favorite, the Empire's chef d'oeuvre. Use them skillfully and they shall undoubtedly move the world. Even a substance as heavy as fate can be shifted by the strength of human hands. I smile cheerfully, pleased as punch while flying in the front ranks of the mage regiment under my direct command. Colonel, you seem happy about something. Right you are, Visha. At this moment, we are on the cusp of moving the world. Any task, big or small, just give your neighborhood mages a call. I shudder. Fortunately, magical aptitude is rare, otherwise, the entire world would have likely become one big mage sweatshop by now. A caveat must be made, however. Mages may be flexible tools capable of almost everything, but that does not mean they can do it all at once. That is versatility's greatest weakness. One must always choose. Specialization and focus are virtues, but the problem with specialty is that it is limited to just one choice. At least this time it is obvious what that choice should be. Tanya's priority is preempting strategic victory for the Reds. The only Solution now is to hinder the enemy's advance. And the necessary, nay, the only, approach is the concentrated deployment of all available air and mage forces into the enemy's rear. Our targets, like our approach, are simple. Target 1. Enemy logistics. Target 2. Enemy logistics. Target 3. Enemy logistics. Artillery observation, frontline support, friendly air defense, countering enemy breakthroughs. None of that matters right now. We can only focus on one item at a time. Hence, in the brief moment available before deployment, I drilled into the other commanders the need to focus all of our efforts on attacking enemy logistics. Tanya has learned firsthand that, on the Eastern Front, such single-minded behavior is necessary to prevent control from crumbling. The troops will not be able to focus their full combat strength on attacking enemy logistics unless they completely ignore the enemy's first echelon. That is, unless they ignore calls for help from friendly forces on the front line. Although I can't say it out loud, the fact remains that these disparate units that were unable to retreat in time are mounting hopeless defenses that will help maximize the effectiveness of our attacks on enemy logistics by draining their ammunition and fuel stores, even if only slightly. Such calculations are an integral part of war. To elaborate, though it may not be much, it will take time for the Federation to overwhelm those strongpoints. As heartless as it sounds, these units are buying us more time, and I have no qualms about taking advantage of a few extra hours of leeway. After all, without this extra time, our entire endeavor would be hopeless. All the worse, then, that some of the men are clamoring for us to aid our beleaguered comrades. The truth is, even all of our available air assets may still not be enough to disrupt the enemy's supply train. And if we fail to do that, it's curtains for us. Right now there is a thin ray of light. But that light is thin and weak. Our only option is to sprint forward as fast as we can before the aperture closes, no matter how ruthless or cruel that might seem. The reasoning is purely logical, but what kind of reason is that? Who can stomach naked logic? For better or for worse, the veterans I have scraped together are all officers whose minds have been tempered by war. In the East, the battlefield may foster deep superstition in people, yet it also paradoxically grants a level-headed view. Could even the most conscientious of individuals swallow whatever logic war demands when thrust into such a situation? The answer is yes. The officers genuinely wish they didn't have to abandon their fellow soldiers, but they also understand that this is what must be done. If there is any catalyst capable of properly sublimating such contradictory feelings, it is the delicate commixture of strategy and valor, represented by the knowledge that only orders like these will lead to victory. This is likely how the mages have convinced themselves. We are a division strong, and I am already leading the mages into enemy territory to attack Federation Army supply lines. I've even falsified orders to accomplish this. I will go as far as it takes and make whatever sacrifices are necessary, even if this all turns out to be a pathological obsession with sunk costs. As long as I can produce results, it should not end in my ruin. I desperately search for signs of a Federation Army supply convoy below for the sake of both the army and myself. It has to be there. I need this, a column of vehicles. The mages are itching for battle. Just let a column of vehicles show up in our sights. Ah, yes, yes, yes. Strategic conviction and a shout of joy. Our gamble has paid off. I see it. Countless gray specks splayed across a silvery white world. Trucks. How badly I have yearned for that sight. Just what I've been looking for. This is an enemy supply unit, no doubt about it. These are Federation trucks. They are traveling by night, with a strict blackout to stay concealed. At this low altitude, however, they are impossible to miss. My throat constricts at the thought of battle. The feeling, however, only lasts a moment. It's quickly banished by joyful anticipation as I drool in excitement over what we are about to achieve. Finally, we've found them. I glance over the convoy, turning my attention toward the sky as a whole, before shouting in pure and utter surprise. This convoy is big game. From what I can see, it's even bigger than what I had hoped for. Bigger than anything I imagined. Certain now that what I am looking at is in fact a dedicated supply unit. Likely a lifeline for the Federation Army's frontline troops. We're even luckier than I thought. As far as I can tell, there are no mana signatures in the sky overhead. Hope bubbles inside me. Festival bells begin ringing in my head. Yet, my sense of duty demands I tamp it down and stay calm. A corner of my mind, the part responsible for guarding the punch bowl, raises a small but insistent hand in warning. What if this is a ruse? The enemy might simply be suppressing their signatures. That is the worst-case scenario. Under ordinary circumstances, I would have been more cautious. Right now, though, I just laugh them off as phantom shadows projected by fear. See how close we are. Already within ideal distance. Considering my unit's level of training, the absence of detected mages can only mean that none are present. A reasonable assumption. But can you be certain? What if there is something unique about their computation orbs that allows them to camouflage themselves? You've seen quite recently that such things are possible, right? During training exercises at the beginning of the year. Perhaps. The voice of caution whispers, still insistent. The voice is right, of course. Such tactical miracles now exist in the world, but I choose to jettison those unnecessary concerns. If the Federation Army wanted to deploy mages to guard such a massive logistics train, they would be area denial troops. If they intended to intercept mages they weren't even sure would come, it would make far more sense to send a traditional force escort rather than to have mages lying in ambush. Besides, if that were the case, if some monomaniacal lunatic managed to prepare the kind of ambush I imagine, wouldn't it have made more sense to have those troops slip through the Imperial defensive line at the start of the offensive and strike the Empire's aerial mages while they slept? In other words, there is no way enemy mages are present right now. What we need to do is obvious: hit the convoy with overwhelming force. With calculations finished, I sigh in relief. All units, this is your commander speaking. All units, this is your commander. Descend upon the prey. Now is the time. Blow the whistle. Release the hounds. As the famous poem goes, now is the time the rain falls, now is the time to rule the world, the first month. And a full 4 months earlier than even Mitsuhide Akechi expected. Maybe we should have thrown a pair of strawberry panties at the enemy, for good measure, although I doubt they'd recognize what that mnemonic means. Instead, I settle for a roar. Attack! Attack! All units, fire at will. I urge them forward, shouting, punch through. Wipe them out. The message is clear. They burst into action as one, each understanding their role. At my order, the regiment breaks rank, reforming a moment later into an assault formation. The mages' uniforms are covered in the dust of the battlefield, but they grip their orbs and rifles firmly. They are an organized and seasoned shock force. No matter how many times I see it, the elegance of their maneuvers impresses me. A revelation of functional beauty. Tattered and dazzling, writhing with violence. It doesn't take a poet to tell. An absolute work of art. What a joy to see. I break into a smile that contains all my elation as I nod with utmost satisfaction. We are professionals, doing professional work. We do our duty with sincerity and professionalism. I never tire of seeing this. As a good citizen, it fills Tanya with pride. The sight of them toiling so diligently should make Tanya want to work harder herself. What a glorious example of external economy. With renewed energy and eagerness, I wave slightly at my adjutant and wingman, First Lieutenant Serebryakov. What do you say? It will mean leading the charge, but how about we give the regiment and those feds a real show? Yes, ma'am, I'll accompany you. Thank you, Lieutenant. Let's get to work. It's time to put the assault in our Type 97 assault orbs. As a twin, dual-core orb, the 97 is capable of simultaneous activation of multiple formulas. Its most striking distinction, however, is its speed. Whatever one might say about its chief designer, the blistering speed of these Elenium Arms masterpieces is a work of art. With such a fast orb, just how fast could you go? Assuming you were focusing entirely on flight, lowering not just the protective film but even the defensive shell as far as possible. Answer: fast enough to ensure that no other aerial mage, however skilled, can keep up. The 97 also boasts excellent acceleration, can turn on a dime, and even has superior formula manifestation speeds, securing its place at the pinnacle of orb design. Hence, according to military administration, the orb's only drawback is that, unfortunately, very few mages can use it effectively. Although, in my view, This too is a mark in the orb's favor. Even by Imperial Mage standards, Tanya and Visha, who have handled these orbs from the very start, are unbelievably fast. Two small shadows. There is no other way to describe how we must appear from the ground, as we accelerate faster and faster, ahead of the rest of the formation, which is already flying at combat speed, tracing a path of destruction that is as beautiful as it is violent. We pierce the wind, eyes fixed on our quarry and fangs bared as we hurtle forward like beasts of prey, but with a level of precision that makes our fangs sharper than any beast's. Our coordination must seem rehearsed, each movement of one mage perfectly complemented by the other. As commander, I fly at the regiment's front, letting the troops see my back, never turning around as I barrel toward the enemy ranks. I trust that First Lieutenant Serebryakov will cover me and keep my eyes focused solely on what lies ahead. My adjutant, tasked with guarding my flank, knows without a doubt that I will break through. That certainty allows her to focus on simply providing cover. Our coordination is based on mutual trust in our respective roles and abilities, resulting in a synergy of small refinements that, over time, has built a tower of greatness. This is the most sophisticated instrument of violence available to the Empire. Naturally, the intended target of this spear point does not stand idly by. The Federation Army's formation is substantial and deep, the embodiment of military pragmatism. I growl a warning to the troops as I see the force coming to greet us. Don't underestimate them just because they're a field train. They've got plenty of armor and AA guns. I shout, half exasperated, half shocked. Watch out for enemy anti-air fire. Even the trucks have guns strapped to them. Federation Army supply units are usually relatively vulnerable. This time, however, it looks as though the Federation Army has prepared a welcome party. Those commies have got some fucking nerve. I mutter, clicking my tongue as I get a better look at the enemy. It is not just the trucks. There are plenty of armored units as well. More than enough to easily take out any lightly equipped airborne force or mop up any troops that might have escaped from Imperial strongpoints. To be blunt, by the standards of the now emaciated Imperial Eastern Army, this logistics convoy would be better described as a top-grade tactical unit. It is shocking to think that the best combat units our own army can muster are no better than the enemy's backline security. As a commander, on the inferior side, the thought makes me sick. I barely manage to hold in a sigh. The anti-aircraft equipment on the trucks even includes autocannons. The Federation is well prepared. This is what they do with their trucks and tanks. What are they made of? Money. As an officer in what is now an impoverished army, I find myself growing jealous. Tanks in the rear, and not just tanks. What about the trucks? Trucks are always in high demand. The audacity of using them as anti-aircraft platforms, regardless of how much surplus they might have. How could such extravagance be allowed? Just think of the cost-benefit analysis. Lend-Lease must have been generous indeed. Don't the coffers ever run out? Or does the Federation Army have its very own magic hat? Then a new possibility dawns on me. What if the cargo units double as part of the second echelon? If so, the idea of a unit in the rear equipped with so much fighting power, enough to almost be mistaken for a Kampfgruppe, becomes easier to understand. In any case, worrying won't change what needs to be done right now. Namely the delivery of a paired explosion and penetration formula straight into the panicking enemy convoy. And the Empire's unique brand of love. I ready the formula, set my sights, and pull the trigger. It's simple. Explosion, flames, shouts, screams. As expected, the enemy repays the favor with a furious volley of steel and flames. Flares rise brilliantly into the night sky, shattering the hushed curtain of darkness. That is just the beginning. A legion of glaring searchlights, blindingly bright, is pointed toward the sky. Colonel, it's a flak barrage. Tisk. So it's not a fluke after all. Looks like they're air defense units. We're already deployed. Agreeing with Visha's warning, we both fire off formulas at the light sources. The enemy cargo vehicles act with decisive speed, beginning to retreat. That response time shouldn't be possible unless it was decided upon in advance. Their haste also sets a time limit for me and the others. While we are under the cover of this infernal darkness, if the trucks manage to slip away, any hope of hunting them down later will be lost. It is a clever way to buy time. However, I barely have a moment to Feel impressed before a deluge of lead begins to pepper the sky, aimed at me and the other Imperial mages. Steel, open air, steel. The Federation army unleashes a steady, carefully composed curtain of defensive fire into the air. It's almost as if this space belongs to Federation fire, with the sky coming in a distant second. This isn't even an actual base, just vehicles. How are they putting up such a fight? My adjutant practically shouts. I expect the other Imperial mages feel the same. The mages strike in formation, hitting their targets like an iron hammer. But usually, when a hammer strikes the crux of a target, that target should collapse. I don't think we are targeting the wrong points, so why hasn't their resistance buckled? Even I'm taken aback. Back in Dacia, Tanya once shouted at her troops not to flinch at a little AA fire, but I am not so quick to berate them this time, not in the face of such a warm welcome party. The density of the fire is extraordinary, a net tight enough to catch even mages equipped with the Type 97. And not just with stray bullets. There is a real risk of repeated hits. Their defensive fire is fearsome. We continue to take hits to our defensive shells, yet frustratingly, we have not managed to breach their defensive screen, even when firing back with optical sniping formulas. However, human history is full of things far from ordinary. This anti-air fire may be intimidating, but Tanya can rest easy on at least one account. As daunting as it is by this war's standards, we are fortunate that guided missiles and short-range radar-guided air defense weapons haven't been invented in this world. I still can't believe a supply convoy can produce enough AA fire to give our unit trouble. You've got it the wrong way around, I say, responding to my adjutant's shock with a deeply rooted smile of relief. Things could have turned out much worse. Thankfully, we're in the enemy's rear, and this is all we have to deal with. Compared to what we could have expected, this is positively tepid. Sure, the water is warm, but let's count our blessings that it isn't hotter. With a grunt, I adjust my trajectory, climb a little higher, and begin accelerating, ready to dive without hesitation for another pass. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but this is just like a nice bath. Come on in, Visha. The water's perfect. Imagine, instead, some Red Army armor accidentally stumbling into NATO territory. This amount of firepower is mild compared to what they might face under NATO air superiority. In fact, compared to the air defense networks consisting of a mass of manpads 1 and self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, it's downright cute. This is far more preferable than stumbling into some American hedgehog unit. Not that the others in the sky can share Tanya's relief. Not even First Lieutenant Serebryakov, who has been with Tanya for some time. The look on my adjutant's face is naturally one of astonishment. However, understanding and resignation soon appear on her face. If I could translate that expression, I think it would say, of course. If anyone would say something like that, it would be the colonel. With that said, First Lieutenant Serebryakov and I maintain exquisite coordination as we dive into the sea of waiting anti-air fire. We mostly stick to explosion formulas. The trucks make for soft targets. As we lay down fire, we focus on blast radius, spraying the area with magic rounds while unleashing occasional optical sniping formulas at the tanks whenever an opportunity arises. It is a prime display of a ground attack mission conducted by mages, reified to textbook levels. We are a relentless and thorough threat, one that cannot be denied even by the stiffest Federation Army defensive fire, and a testament to the sheer ferocity of the Empire's aerial mages. By the 5th pass, however, I must admit that our forces are beginning to reach their limit. My battalion may be fine, but the regiment as a whole is becoming sluggish. Even with our defensive shells, it's hard work sticking our heads into the hornet's nest like this. I nod in agreement with my adjutant. Of course, now that I think of it, sending air assets into AA that's ready and waiting is asking for a lot. Nothing to scoff at. The job is both dangerous and difficult. Now is the time to display leadership. We've got no choice, Lieutenant. We need to take point one more time. We'll fly headfirst into where the AA fire is thickest and show the others that they'll be fine if they're careful. Headfirst into that, my adjutant asks, pointing toward the net of enemy defensive fire with a mixture of exasperation and unease. I grimace. Her reaction is understandable. Sometimes, it takes insight to realize that something is not as Impossible as it appears. Adopting a light-hearted tone to dispel her fears, I say, it's a simple choice, Visha, to be or not to be. And when it comes to not being, there are plenty of holes in the enemy's AA. We can manage, can't we? Well, when you put it that way. That's the spirit, I say with a laugh. The anti-aircraft fire is dense enough to give American imperialism a run for its money, but Blitzkrieg pilots would dive into fire from Blitzkrieg altitudes without defensive shells, even if their survival chances were almost nil. By comparison, mages are relatively blessed. After all, the Type 97's defensive shell can repel a direct hit from even a 40mm round, a veritable mobile assault computation orb. As long as we have our Type 97s, the likelihood of pulling out safely after trading somewhat explosive unpleasantries is actually quite good. Of course, the risk is still not zero. Safety and peace of mind are not identical, but the risk is within acceptable margins. I'll take those odds. As for cumulative risk from repeated passes, that all depends on where you set your time variable. I wave my hand lightly, ignoring the shock on my adjutant's face as she stares at me. It's time to get this over with, I say. All units, now's our chance to hit the enemy. What are you all so worried about? This is just some supply unit. Dive straight in. This amount of flak is a joke. In fact, follow me, I shout. Waving my hand, I raise my defensive shell and lead the charge, purposely diving toward the area where the fire rising from the ground is thickest. Here I come, you commie pieces of shit. Come on out and say hello. Colonel, wait for me, shouts First Lieutenant Serebryakov. Though flustered, she manages to keep up. With her covering my back, I become an unparalleled aerial threat. Now, the two of us plunge in headfirst, commander and adjutant. A glance upward shows that none of the troops have hesitated. We execute our sixth pass, targeting the heavy defenses below. Reckless or not, with the commander and her wingman leading the charge, the others have no choice but to persist. And persistence always pays off. Regardless of how well equipped these ground units might be, after 6 passes we have obviously knocked out more than a few of their anti-aircraft vehicles. Gaps in their flak wall are beginning to show. Our attacks have also resulted in a happy tactical side effect. We can see better now. Our strikes have left several ground targets in flames, improving visibility. Of course, this is just my opinion. Some of the other mages don't seem as satisfied as Tanya. Our battalion is doing fine, but the other soldiers are looking sluggish. They're probably tired. Much more of this, and I think it will just be a matter of time. True, I say with a nod. The rest of the division isn't used to being run so ragged. It must be tough for them. They need a shot of bravery to maintain momentum, even knowing how foolish it is. I decide to set an example by leading from the front once again. I cut through the flak, waiting until I am fully in range before releasing a hail of magic bullets. Enjoy this welcome gift of bombs and bullets from the Empire with love. You better enjoy it. The magic bullets fly forward with unerring accuracy, as expected for such finely machined munitions. As they reach a point above the enemy column, a massive explosion formula manifests in a vortex of destruction, far beyond what a truck's thin skin could possibly defend against, raking the ground below. Meanwhile, a magic bullet from First Lieutenant Serebryakov rips through the same area. Although she was slightly late off the starting block, the rest of the regiment follows close behind with their own attack runs. I nod in satisfaction and begin shouting what passes for encouragement. In a loud, booming voice. You call yourselves Imperial mages? Heroes. Then what's the problem? A fresh recruit could do this. Or do you just find it beneath you? This is pure provocation, plain and simple, but humans are creatures of pride. As a commander, I know that troops are far more worried about being laughed at for feeling scared than anything else. Although I have my fair share of biases when it comes to understanding others, I know that a straightforward, critical kick in the pants is exactly what exhausted men need to keep them going. Shake them up, burn them, blast them to pieces, it doesn't matter. We are violence. We are tyranny. At this point, what I'm saying barely make any sense. As long as it gets the troops fired up, but I understand my purpose and act accordingly. Destroy, burn, smash. They want savage. Then we'll give them savage. We'll march the enemy right into their neat little graves. This will be the battle to end all battles. How would this appear to an outside observer? They would see Tanya, bellowing, dutifully playing her part while making the very human mistake of believing she is being objective when she is anything but. Your courage, your savagery, your honor, your duty, your hatred, your fear, unleash it all upon the cold ground of the East. We are aerial mages. We, alone. War is the epitome of unproductive behavior. It's a ludicrous waste of human resources that any reasonable person should wish to avoid. And, yet, imbue someone with enough honor and courage, and most people will convince themselves that war is the right thing to do. A war song, plucked by the imperial mages in the East. Were someone to describe the scene that way, I would probably laugh them off as bookish and pedantic. But from the outside, Tanya must look like a musical instrument of unparalleled quality within the sorry bounds of war. The results speak for themselves. The imperial mages now fear potential ridicule more than the curtain of lead rising from below. Opinions may differ on whether this is reckless barbarism, advanced battlefield psychology, or simply skillful manipulation. Either way, the results are plain to see. How much destructive power can an appropriately controlled instrument of violence unleash? One need only look at the remnants of the supply convoy for an answer. The sight of burning wrecks only whets the appetite of their destroyers, driving them to search for more targets. Cease fire. Pull back and regroup. I say again, all units, regroup. I glance down at the scene below and quickly process the bottles. Results. A whole enemy supply convoy has been wiped out. Yes, a few vehicles have escaped, but the visible damage is significant. Should we pursue further? No, we don't have time to mop up every single straggler. This is an issue of opportunity cost. Besides, the value of completely annihilating our target was never that high to begin with. What matters is that we have dealt a heavy blow to the enemy's supply network, thereby severely impairing their ability to deliver much-needed supplies to feed its ongoing offensive. Of course, that also means that several capital goods have now vanished from the face of the earth. As the one responsible, I mourn such unnecessary expenditure and economic waste. War, the ultimate outlay, the height of poor economic decisions. Particularly when it comes to the extremes of total war. There must be a limit to such barbarism, I think, overflowing with the spirit of Homo economicus even in the middle of a war. I feel both desolation and satisfaction that I have not allowed the battlefield to rob Tanya of her culture. It's obvious why Tanya has to preserve her humanity, that is, her values as a good member of society who loves the free market. It will be vital if she is to enjoy a rich civilian life after the war. It is precisely because I believe in a brighter future that I approach my work so faithfully. I turn my attention back to the task at hand. Mission accomplished. Once we regroup, it is time to hit the next target. Every objective has to be completed as quickly as possible. Our work here is done. We're moving on. Target any trucks you see. Along the way, trucks only. Ignore everything else. I issue clear orders and begin to lay out our next task when I am unexpectedly interrupted. Wait, aren't we going to pursue them? This is not a voice I recognize. Likely the commander of one of the other units I've scraped together. I turn toward the person, resisting the urge to yell him for being so stupid. There's no time. We have bigger fish to fry. Bigger fish. I nod firmly. Our top priority is crippling the enemy's logistics as a whole. As I've repeatedly emphasized, that is our first, second, and third target. That is the only way we will impact the enemy's ability to take organized action. Tanya made that point multiple times before setting out. Hadn't it been enough? Apparently not. Not if they're questioning orders. There's no time to waste. Every second is precious. But even under the strictest time constraints, it's critical for the leader to ensure that everyone understands the team's goals. Without shared awareness of present goals and circumstances, organizations flounder. Furthermore, our division was hastily scraped together under supposed orders from General Zetor without any prior collective training. Effective communication is therefore paramount. We will only exploit our successes by destabilizing the enemy army as a whole, I say, taking a moment during the brief interlude as troops reform into ranks. I deliver a brief, impassioned spiel to the officers to clarify my intentions. Meanwhile, the mages flit through the air, swiftly and quietly, positioning themselves to advance once more. We attack their logistics. Logistics, logistics, logistics. We must focus entirely on cutting off enemy supplies. Our only hope of impeding the enemy's advance is to annihilate their supplies. The enemy is trying to deliver a decisive strategic blow. If we want to have any hope of stopping them, targeting logistics is the one and only option we have left. This makes it clear what is at stake. The troops need to remember why we are doing all this. I continue to explain what needs to be done, simplifying the issue so that it will sink into their heads. We are the only hope, I say, once again explaining why. You must understand that, at the operational level, we are the only ones left who might be able to stop the enemy. That makes us the Empire's only hope for overcoming our army's tactical inferiority. Hope, the men mutter the word among themselves, faint but thoughtful. It falls upon us to carry that hope forward. Our willingness to commit is the only thing that can make a difference now. Do you understand that? I give them all a hard look, and continue, assuming there are no objections. We have much to do, and it's time for our next job. What's our target, Colonel? We will search the roads and railways Eastern Command has identified as probable main supply routes and attack any supply trains we discover. Additionally, we should pick off any other logistic vehicles we spot if the opportunity presents itself. Although their expressions remain somewhat grim, this cobbled together group of mages nods in apparent understanding. As things are going, we should be able to hit another enemy supply route or two before returning to base. My unit needs to knock out at least one more enemy supply unit tonight. One big enough to require a full regiment of mages. If the other regiments manage to crush at least one unit each, that would bring our total to 4, assuming each formation successfully engages enemy supply units and delivers significant blows without suffering losses that will render them combat ineffective. Then, no, I shake my head. Don't get greedy. The desire to believe that everything might just go your way is a powerful drug. The water of reason cools me down as I scratch my head. Assuming that everything will just work out somehow is dangerous. Throughout history, countless people have been caught by this widely recognized pitfall. I am painfully aware of this, yet the allure is difficult to resist. Staring at reality head-on is hard. It's much easier to view life through rose-colored glasses than to steer by the light of painful truth. One can define reality as one wishes, but reality and dreams remain separate things. It is only by confronting dreadful reality that the world truly begins to smile. I have taken command and am leading the regrouped troops toward our next target when I receive a report from Control about an enemy encounter. Message from the 2nd Regiment. They have encountered a powerful unit of enemy mages and are engaging the enemy. A powerful unit of aerial mages has shown up right when we need to hit the enemy's rear as swiftly as possible. This is awful news. However, I resist the urge to click my tongue. Few contests display as little restraint as war does. Our opponent is just as committed as we are. It's important to keep a close eye on the enemy's moves. CP, this is Eastern Chief Inspector. Advise on enemy situation. The response is clear. According to command, 2nd Regiment has encountered a force of mages 2 regiments strong. 2. That is far too powerful and organized for a chance encounter. Especially since we are operating in the enemy's rear. At first I think I must have misheard, but when command confirms the information, I resign myself to a change in schedule. At the moment, the Imperial Army is attacking Federation logistics using aerial mage regiments. It's natural that the Federation would mobilize to protect their supply lines, but they're reacting too quickly. This has thrown a massive wrench into our timeline. What if I fall into my thoughts as I trail off? What if the enemy has foreseen that the only effective counter to a large-scale offensive is to destroy the rear lines of communications and has already built into their strategy the possibility of our concentrated mage deployment? Have they anticipated large-scale aerial counterattacks and positioned a rapid response force capable of intercepting a mage regiment attacking supply units in the rear? Could the enemy have predicted how everything would play out? Based on our activity, they must have worked out that our mage numbers are dwindling. Even after drawing from every mage formation in the east, we have only managed to assemble a single division. The Federation must have at least formed a general estimate of this. Under such circumstances, would Federation planners really prepare for the possibility of a concentrated aerial mage attack? And even if they did, would they really keep 2 whole regiments of mages in reserve just in case? Hold on. Considering the 2nd Regiment's current position, I continue. According to the plan, the 2nd Regiment is infiltrating deepest into enemy territory. Perhaps the enemy identified this area as a prime target, and specifically assigned strategic reserves there. The Federation may be stronger in troop numbers than we are, but I doubt they can afford to be wasteful with units capable of going toe-to-toe with a full regiment of our aerial mages. A powerful opposing force like this could be the enemy's wildcard. All the more reason we should destroy it. Even if the Federation army has made progress reconstituting its magical forces, their stable of powerful mages remains limited. If we can take this piece off the board. What am I thinking? I shake the foolish thought from my head. We can't lose sight of our priorities. Our time must be spent disrupting enemy logistics, not chasing the vague possibility of destroying enemy units. We will respect the 2nd Regiment's judgment. They are permitted to engage if they deem it necessary. However, destruction of enemy air and mage units is a secondary objective. The priority is the destruction of enemy logistic. Continue to target enemy supply routes. I bark, trailing off. It is important not to confuse dreams with reality. A big bad wolf is currently stalking one of our numerically inferior assault units. That unit is going to have a hard time conducting ground attacks with such a predator on their tail. Even if they manage, it will cost them dearly. A commander can order troops to sacrifice themselves if need be, but it all comes down to opportunity costs. If we can eliminate this persona non grata now, things will likely go smoother later. In terms of sustained assault, if Tanya allows the 2nd Regiment to engage the enemy and then return to base, it will be much easier to exploit them in the future. Then it is decided. Send a message to 2nd Regiment. Have them prioritize fighting the enemy mage unit instead. For now, they can ignore logistic targets. Then have them return to base so I can keep their noses to the grindstone. Next time, tell them to clear the enemy quickly and then come back for food and rest. Yes, a commander must keep priorities clear. On paper, this is simple enough, but in reality, such decisions are incredibly taxing. I try to suppress the distaste rising in my stomach. This decision means that if things go poorly for the 3rd Regiment, and if my unit fails to find another target before nightfall, tonight's attack will end with just a single supply convoy hit. While not a total loss, it's close enough. We need to take out enemy supply units as quickly as possible. The longer we delay, the further the Federation army advances and the more our front dissolves. Time. This is a fight against time. Imagine slamming on the brakes to stop a runaway train. If, by the time it stops, whatever you hope to protect has already been run over, then stopping the train was meaningless. The Federation must be stopped now. I remove my canteen and take a gulp of the tepid water inside, worried that even if we stop the Federation, it might not be before they deliver a fatal blow to the Empire. Perhaps it is nerves. My throat feels unusually dry. I wish I had hot coffee, but there is no use crying over what we cannot have. The most I can hope for now, flying high at speed, is a few sips of water warm to body temperature under my protective film. Unfortunately, although the layout of roads and major railways here suggests a high likelihood of enemy supply units, I see no signs of the enemy. Maybe they are hiding beneath the veil of night until the sun comes up, yet the strain of searching in darkness hangs gloomily over me. It looks like our work will be hard. However, just as I begin to feel we are getting nowhere, 3rd Regiment has failed to find any enemies. Understood, I say. The report is disappointing, but there is good news as well. Since there were no signs of the enemy, the regiment decided to proceed on their own judgment, advancing to the shunting yard. They managed to burn it down. Nearby, they also discovered what appears to be a depot and are now attacking it. The rush of good news hits me like a shot of camphor, raising my flagging spirits. That's what I like to hear. I'm so happy I can't help but clap my hands and smile. Yes, tear the place up by the roots. Of our 3 regiments, my own managed to encounter and attack a supply unit as planned. The 2nd Regiment, meanwhile, has encountered a much swifter and more powerful opposing force and is now engaged in combat. So far, it's a wash. But the remaining regiment penetrated deep into enemy territory. without meeting any resistance and is causing havoc. This is more than just a point in our favor, it's a massive win. Still far too early to breathe easy, but the word success lights up like a slot machine in Tanya's mind. This means it's possible, it really is. While muttering to myself, I notice a figure approaching. I turn my attention to my second in command. He looks as if he has something to say. Major Weiss. It's time, ma'am. For what? Before I can ask what he means, Weiss elaborates. For mid-flight performance rations. Of course, Major Weiss is being considerate. He has kept track of the time for me, and his phrasing is excellent. Had this oversight been pointed out in the presence of the others, it might have damaged Tanya's image as a commander. How fortunate Tanya is to have such a discreet subordinate. Oh, of course, yes, very good. Usually I would never lose track of time, but fatigue and stress have affected my cognitive abilities. I thank Major Weiss, recognizing how distracted I am. Forgive me, Weiss. I appreciate the reminder. There's no need to thank me. You have plenty on your plate already. It's important for me to step up where I can. I thank him again before turning to the others and raising my voice. A short break for performance rations. A mid-air break. I give the mages permission to drop from combat speed to patrol speed, and then I retrieve the rations I stowed away in my pocket. No matter how many times I eat this stuff, I never get used to it. I take an unpleasant bite. In terms of nutritional value, these rations are unbeatable, but they taste even worse than what the Commonwealth has to offer. What is the excuse for this? That we're in the army. These rations may be the pinnacle of high nutrition, but couldn't they at least improve the taste a little? I wonder as I pop the remainder into my mouth, wash it down with a swig of lukewarm water, and then take a bite of military chocolate to get the taste out of my mouth. After a nice post-meal breather, I begin to feel like myself again. I address my second in command. Major Weiss, I have my own thoughts, but what do you think of the unit's combat strength? In a pinch, Colonel, we seem about as strong as always. Ammunition, usage, and casualties are both minor. There should be no problems with combat readiness. However, aside from our own battalion, the other troops aren't as used to such long missions and are likely suffering from fatigue. I nod in agreement. Even my own concentration is faltering. Putting aside the pressure of command, our formation is far from perfect now. I was already growing antsy before we set out, and now that fatigue is mounting, part of me is itching for one more fight. We have plenty of urgency, but very little choice. There is no rest for the weary, Major Weiss. If we stop now, the war will be out of our hands. How will we justify all we have done then? You understand what I mean, don't you? I ask. One good turn begets another. In other words, however much work we have ahead, we can only press on, he asks. That's right. The burden of command at every level is great, I say. Keeping my tone light. Of course, as a commander, I am already juggling more than my share of responsibilities. I have taken direct command of one regiment while managing loose control over the other two via radio. Meanwhile, I must also answer to the brass and handle constant back and forth with Eastern Army Command, who still struggle to grasp the situation. That is just the way of things, even if part of me wishes they would just butt out. Of course, Tanya is reaping her own rewards, but negotiating with Eastern Command over the radio is hard work, dissembling and evading to ensure they don't get in our way. On top of that, I must provide moral support for Captain Mybert, left in charge at our base in Tanya's absence. Like when I told him to send away that annoying messenger from command. And while keeping all these plates spinning, I must also infiltrate enemy territory in search of targets. Tanya may be a durable mage, one who has built up a resistance to pandemonium under General Zetor's unreasonable command, but even she is feeling overworked. The situation is no better for my troops. This has been an extended assault run, with more than half comprised of no-A flight. Simply put, even experienced soldiers in established units will crack from fatigue and pressure when they're subjected to sustained combat with no rest. Tanya disapproves of such labor conditions, but military organizations remain perennially interested in stimulants precisely because of these situations. Every army finds itself scrambling at times to overcome the natural limitations of the human body. Accepting such measures aside, when a machine is pushed to its absolute limits, a certain amount of maintenance becomes essential. In that same vein, I must care for the mages I have assembled if I am to exploit their abilities to the fullest. Yes, care, or, put another way, I must maximize their service rate. This means a minimum level of rest is needed for the exhausted mages. Even if that means doing something as crazy as landing in enemy territory. Once on the ground, I allow the luxury of boiling water and taste. Notwithstanding, another welcome helping of performance rations, and I sit down to rest as well. When finished, I step to the front of the unit to lead, and take flight. Once more. Fortunately, unit morale remains within acceptable margins. Meanwhile, reports come in from 2nd and 3rd regiments that their missions are finished and they are temporarily returning to base. Even better, neither unit has suffered significant personnel or equipment losses. The commanders of the other regiments insist that rest is necessary, but I urge them to sleep during the day and keep fighting for now. I don't want to enter the enemy's backyard during the day. Under the cover of night, however, the Empire's aerial mages have the advantage of experience. There is one fast, clear truth. No matter who you are, no matter your principles or how important they seem, there are only 24 hours in a day. One-man portable air defense system. Surface-to-air missiles that can be quickly fired at aircrafts by a single person. Time is limited. Time is scarce, which means we must make decisions as needed, on a case-by-case basis. How can the day be only half over when we've already done so much? Mumbles the 2nd Regiment's commander over the radio. I sneer in response and say, you mean the day is nearly half gone, don't you? In substance, the two assessments are much the same. To repeat, time is limited. Any mistake that costs us time now is a hideous blow. Even if we reach the expected enemy supply bases, if we don't spot their lights amid the snow, it will mean little. With each passing second, my pessimistic fear of not finding the enemy grows stronger. This is no fun, but I am prepared. I knew from the start that there was no guarantee enemy supply routes would be found, only a high likelihood. We cannot expect to be lucky every time. Yet, on the battlefield, such reasoning grows thin. It is a human paradox. Unfortunately, I now see that this same rapacity lies at the root of market bubbles, bubbles that must eventually collapse. Even knowing this, the temptation remains great. But the question now is how to respond to reality. The longer one gambles time on a campaign with a poor outlook for success, the harder it becomes to recover later. That is the danger of being hemmed in by sunk costs. Conversely, cutting and running too quickly risks wasting hopeful investments. Both choices have merits and demerits. After crossing my arms midair and thinking for a moment, I decide to take on partial additional risk. Climb higher and scout closely for enemies. Our visibility is limited at low altitude. From higher up, we can see better. This makes sense, but we had reasons not to choose this option earlier. Time is limited. The risk of being detected is not as important now as the risk of not detecting the enemy. Under these circumstances, decisive action is needed. We will scan the area using magic radiation. Radar allows one to search for enemies, but it sends out signals that can be traced to their source. Similarly, when mages raise their altitude, their mana signatures can be picked up by enemy units, greatly increasing the risk that the enemy might flee. Worse, there is a non-zero chance that an enemy mage unit could be sent to intercept us. After all, the 2nd Regiment had just fended off an intercepting enemy unit. There is no guarantee the enemy has no more units waiting. Scout for the enemy. Scan the area, but be prepared for a possible enemy response. The men move out to scout, keeping their eyes peeled for enemy mages, while flying in pairs to limit dead angles. However, we soon encounter something both predictable and a total surprise. The expected and the unexpected combined. Ah, a signal is approaching. Incoming flyers at 2 o'clock. Shouts. The mage watching the perimeter. Everyone turns their attention in that direction. Detecting multiple flying objects, the mages appear puzzled. There is no mana signal. The sole response is a faint ping from our basic anti-air warning formulas. As that enemy aircraft, I shout to the confused soldiers. The confusion among the veterans is understandable. It may be hard to believe, but mages are not the only things that fly at this time of night. A sluggish night fighter sent to intercept. Mages. What other explanation could there be? I reply, ordering the unit to regroup into combat formation. If we were facing mages, we would avoid bunching up too closely. 4. Relatively fast night fighters, however, I consider weather combat. Box formation might be preferable for the added defense, but then I spot the enemy in the distance and groan. They seem pretty small for night fighters. Maybe I misjudged the distance. Their silhouettes are small. It is still difficult to identify them through the gloom, but something seems off. Night fighters are generally twin-engine crafts capable of long-distance flight, with decent maneuverability and high speed. Although still far away, this enemy seems. I shout in surprise, realizing they aren't night fighters at all. Single engines. They sent normal fighters. Normal fighters flying at night. That is insane. Not just one, but multiple fighters, all skilled enough to fly in formation under these conditions, are now coming our way. You're joking. Where did they even find the pilots? Takeoff, landing, and finding your target in the air at night are incredibly difficult. The guts and training required to lift off in a single engine fighter at night are immense. Doubly so for these units, which are probably reserves deployed to the rear. Are they mad? I whisper, shaking my head. In this light, visibility is too low for us to see each other clearly. With infuriating tenacity, the enemy aircraft sprays machine gun fire in our direction from across the inky night sky. They attack in hit-and-run fashion, as a standard for aerial combat. Sweeping in formation, while their fire does little against our defensive shells, we cannot lower our guard even for a moment. Daring, indeed. Have it your way, then. If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get. I howl, embodying the courageous commander while internally cursing them. Damned Federation goons. Don't they realize they aren't paid enough for this? Such labor dumping is infuriating. I fly to the front of the regiment, knowing I must lead and inspire the men. I manifest a showy explosion formula and fire it at the enemy. The fighting, however, does not last long. The enemy aircraft are interested only in harassment attacks and seem unwilling to fully commit to a dogfight. On top of that, it's nighttime. Too many variables are at play. Although there are no casualties, valuable time has been wasted. That is more annoying than anything right now. I mutter, if the enemy has brought its air bases this far forward, it spells trouble. A base from which they could dispatch an vector single-engine fighters to us. They will get in our way again if we let them. I doubt we're just unlucky this time. Wait a second, what about flight range? A craft suited for hit-and-run tactics, with a powerful engine and heavy arms and armor, usually has limited range. Although fighter planes are faster than mages, the laws of physics demand a trade-off. But if the enemy's fighters are nearby, everyone, follow the enemy. Let's make sure they get back to Grandma's house safe and sound. We must pursue the enemy and burn down their nest. We can't let these fighters get in our way again. On the battlefield, madness must be met with madness. Barbarism for barbarism. Sometimes the most extreme decisions arise from what reason dictates in the heat of battle. The regiment ascertains the general direction of the enemy swarm and immediately pursues. Several enemy aircraft disperse, making it harder to pinpoint their location. However, while they haven't made it easy, a report soon comes in. Enemy base. I've found the enemy base. I steel my resolve and fly straight toward the location. I gasp upon arrival, barely believing the massive size of the base. Huge airstrips are one thing, plains or packed snowfields can serve as makeshift runways. But the attached facilities rising in majestic succession defy reason. This airfield is so vast that I almost question whether it is merely a forward airfield or a permanent installation. As far as I recall, the Imperial Air Fleet scouted this area only a few days ago. If such a base existed here, it would have been reported. Where the hell did this spring up from? It is like a fable, like the legend of how Sunamata Castle was built in one night. A base that shouldn't exist in a place it shouldn't. My head begins to pound. One need not invoke Clausewitz's fog and friction to know that the battlefield is rife with the unknowns. However, a miscalculation of this magnitude should be impossible without a great deal of effort on the enemy's part. If this is a field base, it's amazing they've placed it this far forward. With full facilities. It is a mystery how they did it, but I can't help but flinch at their audacity. We are practically on the front lines. The sheer aggressiveness required to push a base so close to the Imperial Army's heavy artillery, if that artillery were still functioning, makes me want to curse out loud. If only General Lawton were still alive. That old general was on the same wavelength as Zetor. Had he lived, merely reporting our findings might have been enough for him to mobilize the artillery, even if the gun crews were already at death's door. Colonel, what's wrong? My adjutant asks. I say it's nothing. I had hoped to outsource this job, but it appears we must handle it ourselves, a complaint one cannot voice to a subordinate. Instead, Tanya must remain upbeat, as if this were the chance of a lifetime. I was just feeling guilty that we get to keep such a big target all for ourselves. It does look like it will burn rather nicely, my adjutant agrees. I nod, then cock my head. We are on snow. Even if we try to ignite their aircraft fuel, I doubt the flames will spread far. Besides, given their position, the enemy likely expects air raids and artillery assaults and is prepared to handle damage control. It looks like tossing in a few explosion formulas and then strolling away while the ruins burn behind us is not an option. Before I can finish, my mind shifts to a deconstructionist perspective. One might say that the chance of the base burning from a single attack is low, or that the risk is low. Aerial bases are full of flammable substances, but even if munitions and fuel bunkers are hit, many facilities may remain intact. Which means, prepare explosion formulas. As soon as the flammable substances are blown away, move in and clear it out. Consider any poorly guarded stockpiles ours for the taking. An airborne drop. As I shout orders over the radio, my second in command is confused. Colonel, this is Major Weiss. I'm sorry, move in and clear it out. What does that mean? This base is on snow. If it won't burn, we'll just need to go down there and destroy it ourselves. A combat drop? No, an assault. An airborne assault. Our goal is to destroy the enemy's nest, not to occupy it. Any questions? He has none. I nod in satisfaction and order the regiment, still forming up for a ground assault, to focus on flammable materials with light explosion formulas directed at the ground. Unfortunately, the enemy's AA fire is dense here as well. Of course, in this shootout against a full regiment of mages, with their defensive shells and protective films, the base is the first to capitulate. Once most enemy anti-air emplacements are destroyed, their fire begins to weaken. Now is our chance. I order the troops to descend and attack. Leading, once again from the front, I touch down near the ruins of what appears to have been the Federation Air Base's command center. I hope to find useful information when I spot a cipher device that has been thoroughly demolished. I can't help but suck my teeth. The damage was not caused by one of our explosion formulas or collateral damage. The device had been carefully doused in oil, chopped with an axe, and, just to be doubly sure, was even blown up. Once they realized their HQ was under attack, someone in the Federation must have ensured the cipher device was completely destroyed before fleeing. Man, talk about going overboard, someone mutters, but before they can finish, a burst of fire from a heavy machine gun lights up the ruined remains of the command post, shooting from wall to wall. The bullets cut through the wood-like paper, bursting into the room, screaming murder, eager to reduce the soft humans inside to chunks of meat. In response, the mages and I immediately drop to the floor and take cover, our eyes fixed on the space outside. I blink in surprise. Is that what I think it is? A gun emplacement? Seriously? I groan in shock. What is going on? This is just a forward air base. Why does it have gun stations set up as if expecting paratroopers? Is this an example of on-site ingenuity by the Federation, or has a higher up been particularly worried about Imperial airborne attack? I can only guess as I order the nearby soldiers and officers to return fire. Damn, it looks like the enemy is learning. Experience comes at a high price, but it is the best teacher any serious pupil advances under its tutelage. Assuming they survive, that is. What else have they been up to? It is a crazy idea, but as my troops huddle in the ruined command center, I yell, search the floor. Amazingly, it appears an underground bunker has been installed. Furthermore, reports from other troops indicate several disguised bunkers throughout the site. The Federation's paranoia is shocking. Their level of preparation, unbelievable. I immediately change plans. It is time for us to get out of here. I quickly issue orders. Set the place alight and disengage. We'll have to settle for just shitting in their beds this time. What do you mean, set it alight? Weiss asks, confused. I shout for him to get it together. Even temporarily occupying this base will take too much time and effort right now. We need to prioritize our initial goal of destruction. Forget seizing supplies for now. Above or below ground, burn it all. But Major Weiss stiffly offers, the enemy opposition is fierce. Aren't we going to face plenty of resistance trying to burn the place down as well? Why, Major Weiss, that's what ingenuity is for. He swallows his words. Let's go, I say. Airfields are meant to be burned. It's tradition. What tradition? Let's call it Eastern flair. There are combat examples from the other world that fill Tanya's mind. Fighter pilots landing at air bases and setting them ablaze before taking off again. And those were just ordinary pilots. Why should aerial mages, with their defensive shells, fear enemies prepared for standard air assaults and airborne drops? A mage may not have the firepower of artillery, the armor of a heavy tank, or the holding power of infantry, but they combine the light tank armor with artillery-level firepower and can conduct infantry-like operations, more than enough to raise a Federation airfield or two. So long as we commit to the assault, enemy lines will crumble. We can burn the base, capture enemy maps, share the information with friendly units, and then move on to our next target. I run the calculations in my head as I lift off and assume position in the air. Whether we attack again or withdraw, for it to be organized, I must maintain strict control. As soon as I have that thought, I notice something is off. The other soldiers are moving slower than usual. No, not just slow. Some haven't even gotten back in formation yet. I glance around in shock. As the situation sets in, I ask Weiss what the hell is going on. He points toward the troops with a frown and tells me, they are exhausted. And you? I'm not too bad yet. Actually, I'm more worried about you, Colonel. Given the burden of command. So I appear tired, too, I reply quietly. Even as a salaryman who can fight for 24 hours straight, with so much pressure coming from so many sides, it is impossible to deny that. Even I am running ragged. We've been through tougher experiences than this. However, the other regiments, yes, ma'am, our unit is used to being overworked, so we take overtime in stride. However, even if morale holds, it will be difficult to cover our exhaustion through sheer will while working with personnel less accustomed to such fatigue. I thought I had accounted for this, but the exhaustion among the men is inconsistent. The unit's condition is patchy, which will ultimately damage cohesion. There are still others whose opinions I should seek. Lieutenant Westman. Yes. What is it, Colonel? He responds brightly, the very picture of youthful vigor. Can you and your unit manage one more fight? If you command it, Colonel. I see, I say, the corners of my mouth twisting up in amusement as I turn toward Major Weiss once more. There, it seems we are not quite on our last legs yet. That is only because we are used to you pushing our noses to the grindstone like this, Colonel, Major Weiss says somewhat obstinately. For some reason, First Lieutenant Serebryakov, positioned nearby and having been keeping watch, nods emphatically in response. Tanya is only doing this due to orders from above. She would much rather proclaim herself no friend to such sweatshop practices. But, perhaps, sadly, this is the battlefield. I do not have the luxury of explaining myself to my subordinates. Hands tied, I decide to assign roles better suited to their aptitudes. We have no choice, then. It is time to return to base. But let us make a few small arrangements first. How much should we commit? The answer is obvious. I will leave most of it to you, Major. Take the troops back to base with you. Have your rest if need be. Why? I'm sorry, I don't understand. What's wrong, Major? Surely you can lead the regiment back on your own. Of course. Just say the word and I will do my best. But, what about you, Colonel? Will you be acting independently? That's right, I say, nodding. I plan to return by leading the absent Grantz's company and Lieutenant Westman's unit on a sweep of the route where the likelihood of encountering enemies seems highest. But is there any need for you to lead the detachment yourself? Asks Major Weiss doubtfully. Major Weiss's question is very on the nose. Honestly, I would rather not perform unpaid overtime like this, especially when there's nothing in it for me. However, I cannot overlook the danger posed by the Reds. It's a necessary expenditure for Tanya's future safety, the processing of a threat that could lead to serious harm later. But an expenditure is still an expenditure. I doubt I would take on so much risk unless it were the Reds who were involved. But this is no time to grow maudlin, the matter is settled. I answer, Weiss in a purposely playful tone. These men still have plenty of energy to spare. What would you have me do? Take them on a joyride instead? That doesn't sound very fun. If we're going to head home either way, doesn't it sound more entertaining to work out all this pent-up energy by cutting a path straight through the enemy instead? But the sun is almost coming up. All the better to see our targets by. Won't they be able to see you clearly as well? True, but fair is fair, after all. I've never been much for playing fair. But we can hardly throw a tantrum just because the sun refuses to take our side. All I really care about in the end is whether or not we get to blow up more enemies. I know I should be used to this by now, Lieutenant Colonel, but your idea of fun is as lopsided as ever. And here I thought I was promoting a fair and balanced approach for once. You just can't win sometimes. Realizing that my jokes are not dispelling Major Weiss's frown, I decide to ask what is really troubling him. Is there something else? Colonel, are you sure about this? It will involve a dramatic increase in danger. Danger. I take a moment to explain my reasoning. If we meet any enemies along the way, they are likely to be supply units. According to the Federation Army maps we captured, the main highways are being used to transport fuel, just as we thought. There is a high chance we will get eyes on a logistics convoy laden with petrol. And then you'll hit them. Yes, I say, nodding ferociously. We can't just let a cluster of flammable goods stroll past, unperturbed, especially not when the enemy is carrying that cargo right beneath our noses. Is it really that likely that supplies are being transported to the front line at night? Without a doubt, I say, trying to reassure Major Weiss. In terms of self-sufficiency, tanks rank somewhere near the bottom. Without regular supply and maintenance, tanks grind to a halt. Without infantry support, they are surprisingly fragile. If the enemy is going to use armor as the tip of the spear in a flat, grinding push like this, they are going to have to keep feeding that armor with constant fuel to sustain their advance. If our side had plenty of fuel, this could have created a nightmare situation where the enemy's vanguard continuously pushed forward using our own gas against us. But, for better or worse, the amount of fuel the Federation Army can steal from the Imperial Army at the moment is minuscule. After all, General Zedor transferred much of that fuel to the Ildone front, having repeatedly squeezed out what reserves we could for the concentrated deployment of large panzer regiments. Our fuel bunkers are likely empty across the entire front, meaning that the option of capturing fuel is effectively off the table for the enemy. Under the present circumstances, with both sides scrambling for air superiority and the Federation making a mad dash to carry fuel to the front, the Empire's one and only prescription for what ails us is to cut off the Federation's supply arteries. I am certain of this. The enemy will undoubtedly strive to supply their front lines as quickly as possible. Whether we find anything will depend to some degree on luck, but the enemy is sure to be transporting a high volume of supplies, enough to allow for some losses. That is an insightful opinion, but how can you know so much? My education in War College, Major. Anyone with a smattering of logistical knowledge could figure out as much by working backward. I suspect Colonel Uger could even deduce which routes they might take. Colonel Uger, I thought he stayed cooped up at the General Staff office. Major Weiss, were you not aware? Colonel Uger and I were classmates. Your argument suddenly sounds a lot more persuasive. What is that supposed to mean? I shrug and continue smiling broadly. Now then, I'll leave the rest to you. We need to get going. In the end, my suspicion proves correct. We discover several fuel convoys, which we destroy, scattering huge amounts of flammable gas onto the earth in a grand feat of vandalism. It is a fine enough showing, but far from decisive. Visha, how are communications? There are no indications yet that the advancing Federation Army has been ordered to halt. Our front line remains in chaos. Based on the units I can confirm, it already seems that a fair number of our forces will be left behind, my adjutant says. Of course, this was expected, predicted, even. It would be too much to Expect the entire army to move instantly based on falsified orders I had forced through. Besides, even if the entire army had attempted to implement my orders immediately, how many units were actually in a position to do so smoothly? Very few, I imagine. I understand, but I can't help but pout. This is only the first day. Less than 20 hours have passed since everything began, yet a whole day's worth of retreating has already been lost. If the Empire does not kick it into high gear, then this field army Tanya is trying to pull back, by hell or high water, will dissolve in spectacular fashion. For the first time, I pray softly to Lieutenant Grants. Please, I am begging you. Somehow, you need to get through to General Zetor.